Greetings everyone. We will now see strings in Java. Myself, Wilfred Almeida. So let's begin. So speaking of strings in general, what is a string? So by definition, if we see a string is an ordered sequence of characters. So ordered sequence of characters, that's a hefty definition, but what exactly is a string? So any example of string could be anything that we see here or typed here is a string. So a collection of characters is a string. So everything and anything you can see here is a string, and all the characters and everything we can read as strings. So now we got an idea of strings in general life, let's take a look at strings in programming. So what is so different about strings in programming? So looking about programming, there is absolutely nothing different than our knowledge of strings in programming. We just represent strings from our real life into a computer program. That's it. That's the difference. So if asked in your Viva that what is the difference between strings in a real life or normal life and the strings we use in computer programming, so there is no difference. Strings are the representation of textual data from our real life to the computer programs. So moving on, let's take a look at the use of strings. So our life is good. So why should we bother about using strings? Well, mark my words, strings are most important and most commonly used objects in making of real world application. So what does that mean? So to understand that, let's take a case study to prove that strings are most commonly used objects. So now let's take an example that we are making an banking application. So we will need to store lots and lots of data. But considering the basic amount of data what we need to store, we will need to store the customer name. So in name there would be first name, middle name and last name. So to represent this, we would need strings in our program. Then we have the customer address which further gets subdivided. Even that is represented in string. We have mobile number, we could represent that in integer format. We have the Aadhaar number, we could represent that in integer format. Then we have the PAN card number, it goes into string category. Then the account number. So account number is preferably string because it's nowadays it's a combination of alphanumeric characters. So it is preferred to keep account number into string format. And then we have the user's gender, which also comes in string format. So we can see here that 80 to 90% of the data representation in computer programs is done using string. So remember this as a thumb rule. Strings are mostly used objects in any computer application, and you can consider any other application. And so considering any other application, you can apply the strings thumb rule. And if you list out the data needs to be stored and take out its data types, so the rule always proves true that strings are most commonly used objects in programming. So so now moving on, you might want to keep a mechanism of taking notes handy, as you might want to note down some things. So now let's take a look at strings in Java. So first we need to declare strings. We need to tell a program that we'll be using strings. So declaration in strings, we can do it in two ways. So in Java we have two ways of declaring strings. So one by one, let's take a look at each of the method in programmatical way. So this is just a simple Java program, a class and a main method. So if you want to declare strings, the first would be you would need to declare the data type as string and then a string name. It could be anything following the naming convention of Java, and then an equal to sign, and then we could assign the values in double quotations. So anything we would write here would become a string in the computer's memory. And now the computer considers the program considers my string as a string object. So let's try and print this. save, and when we run it, we are getting the output as a hello world. So now the string hello world is represented in a computer program. So another way of declaring and making strings in Java is using the new keyword. So we would write string name equals to the usage of new keyword is important here. New string, and inside the parenthesis we would pass our text. So if we now run this, we should get both of our strings as our output, and here we have hello world and good morning as our outputs. So these both are the ways of representing strings in our computer program. So now what happens here, let's take a deeper look. So we want to declare a string, so we make an object. So suppose we want to make a string object, and the strings data would be hello world. So we write it in a computer program, and then we make a reference variable pointing to it, and the name of our reference variable could be anything which follows the Java's variable naming convention. So this is our object represented in a computer's memory, and this hello world is the data stored into the object, and the variable my string is a reference pointing to that string. So if we want to use this object anywhere in a program, we would need to use it by the use of the variable my string. So like we have seen here, we want to print the string, so we have written here my string. So whenever we mention like this, so here we have used S1 in println. So what we have done is we have told the computer that we want the variable S1 to be used. So what a program does is whenever it encounters S1 like this, it will substitute its value. So the value of the object is world. So the value world would be substituted here, and then it would be system.out.println world. So it will print world. So now let's run the program. And yes, we are getting the output hello world because we are defining two strings and then printing both. Okay, so now let's move on. So now let us understand the concept of immutability. So what does the word immutable means? So immutable means something that cannot be changed. So a value that cannot be changed is called as immutable. So example of immutable could be our Aadhaar numbers and our PAN card numbers. They are assigned once per for a person, and they cannot be changed. So they are permanent now. So we can say that they are immutable as they cannot be changed. And example of something that changes. So the opposite of immutable is mutable. So mutable means something that changes. So immutable is something whose value changes, and opposite of immutable is mutable. Immutable is something whose value does not change. Immutable is something whose value does not change, and mutable is something whose value changes. So we have immutable, so something whose value cannot be changed, and mutable whose value changes. For example we have our Aadhaar and PAN numbers, and for example of mutable, we have suppose our name is mutable since we can change it. We would have to go undergo some legal procedure, but yes, we can change it. But we cannot change our Aadhaar number and PAN numbers, so they are immutable now. Whereas something whose value changes, for example, our name is mutable. So now let us understand Java strings and immutability. So what is the relationship between Java strings and immutability? So now mark my words, Java strings are immutable in nature. So Java strings are immutable in nature. So what does this mean? It means that once a string is defined, its data cannot be changed. I'll repeat. So Java strings are immutable. So once a string is defined, its data cannot be changed. Once a string is defined, its data cannot be changed. So what does this mean? Let's take a look. So suppose we have a string object here, say hello world, and we have a reference s pointing to it. So now if you want to change the content, this hello world, if you want to change the word world and replace it with some other word, so suppose we want to make the string as hello human. So if you want to do this, we would simply think that since we can easily replace the word world with the word human, but it's not simple and it's not possible. We cannot remove the word world from this existing string object and put the word human there. So what we would have to do is we would have to destroy this complete hello world object and create a new object hello human and assign this variable s to point to it. So Java strings are immutable. So, why are strings immutable? Let's take a deeper look. So, the memory allocation to strings done in Java is contiguous. So, the memory blocks which are allocated are one beside another. So, if we say that this is our allocated memory and this is a string, so suppose we have a string. A string is hello. So now if you want to change the string, the memory allocated to the string is contiguous. This means that there is some data before the string and there is some data after the string. So changing the string's data can change the size of the object. So if we want to add a world to this string, append world to the string, then we would need to change the size. But Java's rule is that a memory allocation to string is contiguous, so there might not be memory from this side to be assigned to the string. Also, if considering size change, if we reduce the size and we delete these two characters, then there will be free space, and this space might be so small that it might not be used. So the availability of changing data makes memory problems. So that's why strings are considered immutable. So remember this: once a string is defined, its data cannot be changed, and we would have to destroy the string object and create a new object for strings. So remember this: Java strings are mutable. So now before moving on, let's take a look at string buffer. So remember this: string buffer is 98% same as strings. It is absolutely same. The only difference between string and string buffer is a string buffer is mutable. So what do we mean by string buffer is mutable? So let's take our look in a program. We saw that strings data cannot be changed. So if we try to make a string buffer object, string buffer, so we have created a simple string buffer object with the string as hello, and we are trying to print it. So when we print, we get the output as hello. So now if we want to change the data of the string hello, so we could we want to change the data of the string buffer. So we could do string buffer dot there is a method append. There is no need to worry about the method. We would take a further look. We would take a look at it in the further sections. So if we want to append the string world to our existing string hello, so let's see what happens. So we got the output as hello world. Because the string buffer object is mutable, it means that its data can be changed. So we can do the addition and removal of data on a string buffer object, but on a string we cannot do that. So let's take a deeper look. So whenever a string buffer object is defined, so we suppose that this is a string buffer object, and this hello is the content of the object. So whenever a string buffer object is made in memory, there is always some extra space kept for further data. So if you want to add some data, Java automatically keeps some blocks of memory alongside the string buffer object for additional data that could be added. So you might wonder that how much exactly data does the Java keep here for existing for new data arrivals. So we have a formula for that, and it is discussed later in the video. So if we want to add more data, then the data is simply added to these free memory spaces. And if the memory gets full, the allotted memory is full, and there is more data that needs to be added, then the whole object, string buffer object, will be created new in bigger memory with the existing data and the new data together. So we would have a new string, hello world, and this string would be taking memory space in some other location rather than this, because this memory became short, was less, and there was data before and after. So the memory could, even though there was extra space, the memory could not be assigned to the new object. So the memory was garbage collected, and the data of the string was taken into a new memory space, and the string which was to be added to the string was added. And if we want to perform a removal, so if we try and remove these 3 or 4 characters, then what would happen? Then they would be removed from this memory, but the memory which is there would be would stay like that. So if we have a string buffer object as like this, and it has 4 blocks of memory, and we are using only 3 blocks, so initially we would have this one block as free, and if we delete any content from these three, and suppose we make it one, so the remaining 2 blocks get added to this, and the memory still remains 3. So the default allocation for a string buffer object, it's all defined by the JVM, and there is a formula for that, and the programmer is usually not needed to be bothered with the allocation and deallocation of string buffer memory. So I hope that is clear. So moving on. So before we move on, remember that string is mutable in Java. String objects are mutable, which means that after defining, its data cannot be changed. And string buffer, which is exactly same as string, the only difference is that it is mutable, which means after definition, its data can be changed. So now let us consider an example, and these 2 examples. So let me just quickly write them out. So what we are doing here is we are defining a string s with the content of hello, and then we have the concat method for strings. This concat method adds the given string to the end of the string. So ideally we should have the string now as hello world. This should be a new string. So try to guess the output. If we run this program, what would the output be? So let's take a look. So we are getting the output as hello. So you might wonder why, because we did the operation of concatenating the string world to the existing string hello, but still the string hasn't changed. So what happened? So here we have a string s pointing to the object hello, and what we have done in the code is we have called the method s.concat. So when we do this, what happens is the string hello, we have the string hello, and the word world, it gets concatenated to the string. This operation happens correctly, but since string objects are immutable, this s.concat is returned as a new object by JVM. So here this s.concat string object is returned, and this string object, since nothing is no there is no variable pointing to this newly written string, it automatically goes for garbage collection, and the string as stays just as it was. And now considering the second example, we have the string buffer. So let's try and run this code. So we have a string buffer. So what we are doing here in this program is we have taken a string buffer object with the data value as hello, and we are trying to append the string world to it. So when we run this code, we get the output as hello world. So in the case of string buffer, we can see that the string world is appended to the word hello. But in the case of string, we saw that a new string object was returned with a concatenated string, so we got the new object as hello world. And here in the string buffer's case, the word world is appended to the word hello, and the existing string buffer object sb remains same, whereas in the string we got a new object, and since there was nothing pointing to this object, it went for garbage collection, and our original string s was untouched, and hence we got the output as hello, whereas in the string buffer's case, as explained, we got the output as hello world. So the conclusion from the above example. So as I said, string objects are immutable. If we perform any changes to existing string, it is destroyed and a new string value is returned. So the existing data is not changed. A new string is created with the existing data copied and the new data added to the data. So in the above example, since value returned from s.concat was not being assigned to any variable, we got the output as hello, because our original variable s was never changed, and a string buffer is mutable. So if we perform any change to existing object, the changes are performed and the original object is retained with the new changes. Hence, we got the output as a good morning or a hello world in the above example. So, moving on, this is an important concept, the difference between equal to operator and equals method. So, equal to is an operator in Java used for comparison. So, you might have used it in your daily Java programs, and equals is a method used for comparison too. But what could be the difference, or what is the difference between these two? So let's take a look by considering these examples. So suppose, so we have our example here. In this, we have created two string s1 and string s2. Both have the same data hello, and we are trying to print two use cases. Uh, s1 equal to s2 and s1 dot equals s2. So try for a moment and try to guess the output of this program. So since both methods are used for comparison, you might guess you might have guessed the output, but the output here is false and true. So s1 equal to s2 is, we are getting the output as false, and s1 equals s2, we are getting the output as true. So why such output? So let's take a look at that. So we are creating an object, the content hello, and making a variable to it as s1. Then we are making another object s2 with the same content of hello. So as we know that the equal to operator is used for comparison, but remember this equal to operator is used for memory address or reference comparison, meaning that if two objects so are pointing to the same memory location, then the equal to operator would return true. So in this case we have created two objects. So these are two different objects, so s1 and s2 aren't pointing to same memory location, they are pointing to different memory locations. So we got the output as false. And then we have the equals method. So equals method is a method which is derived from the object class. So let's take a look at the equals method once. So if we go into the predefined code of the object class, there is a lot of code, and we would somewhere find a equals method. So here is the equals method, but we can see that equals method inside its definition it uses the equal to operator. So in our case, just as we saw now, if equal to operator is used, then equal to operator compares if the two objects are pointing to the same memory location, and it returns true. But our output which we got here was false and true. So by the definition of equals method, just now we saw that equals methods uses equal to operator inside. So ideally by the definition we should get false as our output, because both s1 and s2 point to two different objects. But no, we got the output as true. And why is that? So this is important. Now remember this, the string class has overridden the equals method from object class for content comparison. meaning that if we call the equals method on any string object, then since it is overridden by the string class, it would be used for content comparison rather than the memory space or reference or address comparison. So as we saw here, the equals method returns true because the content of both of the strings is same, hello. And now if we have different content, then we get the output as false. Since S1 and S2 don't point to same memory location, the equal to operator returns false. And since S1 equals S2, the both of the content is different, we get false as our output. And if the content is same, then we would get true as our output. So just as we saw here, the string class has overridden the equals method from the object class for content comparison. The default nature of object classes equals method is reference or address comparison. So the default nature of the objects class equals method is a reference comparison, and a string class has overridden this method for content comparison. So moving on, let's take the another example. In this case, we are doing the same thing for string buffer. We have two string buffer objects S1 and S2 with the content as hello for both, and we are printing here the result of S1 equal to S2 and S1 dot equals S2. So since we saw the strings case, you might try to guess the output, and if you've taken a guess, then let's run the program. And as we can see here, in both the cases, we got false as the output. So you might wonder why such. So since S1 and S2 are two different objects created, so they do not point to same memory location, so the equal to operator would return false. But we saw in strings case that the equals method returned true. uh, that was because the string class has overridden the equals method of the object class, but string buffer class has not overridden the object class equals method. So string buffer uses the method which it equals method which it gets from the its parent, the object class. And since equals method does a reference or memory address comparison, so we get false as our output in both the cases. So we got false and false as output because both of these objects do not point to the same memory location. They point to two differently created objects in the memory location. So as you can see here, we get false for this, and for equal to operator on strings, and for string equals method, we get true as our output. Then for string buffers equal to operator, since both are not pointing to same memory location, we get false as our output. And since for string buffers equals method, it is not overridden by string buffer, so we get the default object class method, and which does the memory comparison, and hence we get false. So remember this, string class equal to method does content comparison and string buffers equals method and string buffers equals method does reference or memory comparison. So moving on, we have the conclusion. In strings case, equal to operator is meant for reference comparison, so we get false as our answer. And equals method of object class is overridden by string class for content comparison, so we get true as our answer. So you might want to note down the example and the conclusion. So moving on, the conclusion for string buffer. So in string buffer, the equal to operator has the same behavior. So it is meant for reference comparison. So we get false as our output because S1 and S2 do not point to the same memory locations. And the equals method of the object class is not overridden by string buffer class for content comparison. Hence, equals method of object class is called when we call the string buffers equals method, and this equals method is meant for reference comparison, so we get false as the answer of s1 dot equals s2. So I hope that's clear, and let's move on. So now we will take a look at heap and the string constant pool. So let us talk about Java heap space. So heap space is in Java, dynamic memory allocation for Java objects, and all objects we create in a program are stored inside the heap memory, and heap memory is auto managed by JVM and programmers aren't bothered with it. So let's take a look at what is heap memory. So our computer programs get some memory space in RAM. So what JVM does is it divides this memory space into logical spaces for different operations. So we have different memory locations inside the memory allocated. So we have the heap space, and then we have another as the method space, and another one we have is the stack space. So what is the heap space? So heap space, in a program we create objects. So all of our created objects are stored inside the heap memory. So all of our are stored inside the heap memory. So all objects we create in a program are stored inside the heap memory. So it is dynamically allocated memory, and all the objects we create in a program are stored inside the heap memory. And this heap memory is auto managed by JVM. So we aren't bothered as programmers to change the or manage memory of the heap space. In fact, the heap space is not at all accessible to the programmer. It is restricted access by JVM, and only JVM can access the heap space. So now that we have understood what is heap space, let's move on, and let us consider the following example, the following two declaration methods of string. So one method we have is this method where we use literals for declaring and defining a string, and another one we have is we use the new keyword to create a new string. So what is the difference between these two? So before that, first let's note some thumb rules in Java. So in Java, always remember that whenever we use the new keyword, an object inside the heap memory is created. So in Java, whenever we use the new keyword, an object inside the heap memory is created. So just now, as I explained, inside the heap memory, all of our objects created by a program are stored inside the heap memory. So whenever we use the new method for declaring, so inside the heap memory, an object will be created. Hello, and we would have the reference variable. Have the reference variable s pointing to it. And now let us consider this example. So in this case, whenever we use literals value, and now let's take a look at this example. So whenever we use the literal method, an object is created inside the SCP or the string constant pool, what it is called. So this hello object would be created inside the SCP memory. So you might wonder what is SCP. So we will discuss that. So SCP or the string constant pool, the string constant pool SCP. So the string constant pool is where all the constant string literals. So we have the literal hello here. So other literals, whatever literals we used in a program are stored inside the SCP area. So whenever we use string literals, an object is created inside the SCP area. So the SCP area is a special memory in a so SCP or string constant pool is a special memory space in Java where all the string literals are stored. So whenever in a program we use string literals like this inside the double quotes, these literals are stored in the SCP string constant pool memory space. So the string constant pool is a special memory, and you might want to know this that you might wonder where is the SCP exactly inside the memory spaces that we discussed earlier. So until Java version 1.6, the SCP was inside the method space, but from version 1.7, SCP was moved into the heap space. So from interview point of view, this might or might not be asked, but it is important to know when working with legacy code written in versions prior to 1.7 because the method space had memory limitations due to which the SCP couldn't be expanded and had a fixed size. So from version 1.7 it was moved into the heap space where flexibility for memory space was available. So whenever we use string, so suppose we have our string as equals to hello. So this hello is created inside the heap memory. So inside the heap memory, an object for hello would be created. So this object would be inside the heap memory, and we would get the reference variable s pointing to it. So we have the reference variable s pointing to it. So now moving on. So now this part is important. There are two thumb rules in Java. Like I said before, these are first one. Whenever we use new keyword, an object is compulsorily created inside the heap memory. And second is that for every string, literal, an object is created inside the string constant pool SCP. So these are two important thumb rules in Java. Whenever we use the new keyword, an object is compulsorily created inside the heap memory, and for every string literal, an object is created inside SCP. So note down these two thumb rules because these are highly important, and we will see some use cases and examples based on these two rules. So like I said, whenever we use new keyword, an object is compulsorily created inside the heap memory, and for every string literal, Java creates an object in the special memory called string constant pool. And whenever we use the direct assignment using literals, an object only in SCP is created. So we would see this in further examples. So first, JVM will check if there are any existing objects, and if not, it creates a new object. And If there are existing objects, then JVM returns a reference to that same object. So let's take a look at this in deep. So we have the, let's take this example. So we have an example. We have string s1 equals to new string hello. Then we have string s2 equal to new string hello. And then we have s3 and s4 with the content of hello. So now, how many objects will be created in total by our Java program? So how many total objects we created now, and where would they be? So would they be in the heap space or in the SCP? So let's take a look. So let's consider line 1. So we have the first line. string s1 equals to new string hello. So our first thumb rule, whenever we have a string literal, an object goes inside the SCP. So So here we have our heap space and our SCP space, and so considering the first line, we have to return two thumb rules. So whenever we use new keyword, an object is compulsorily created inside the heap memory. So here we have used the new keyword, so an object would be created inside the heap memory, and we have the reference variable s1 pointing to it. So, and then we have a second thumb rule. So our second thumb rule says for every string literal, an object is created inside the SCP. So we have the string literal hello here. So for this hello, an object for in the SCP would be created too. So we now have two objects. One is inside the heap and one is inside the SCP. Then moving on to line number 2, we have new string s2 equals to hello. So here our first thumb rule, we have used the new keyword. So an object would be compulsorily created inside the heap memory. So an object gets created inside the heap memory, and we have the reference variable s2 pointing to it. And as per a second thumb rule, for every string literal a value would be created inside the SCP. So since this value is a is an literal, so JVM would go to create an object inside the SCP. But before creating any object inside the SCP, JVM always checks whether existing objects with the same data exist. So if there is any object with the same data, then a new object won't be created. So since from line number 1, we have the object for hello inside the SCP, so for line number 2's hello literal, new object inside the SCP won't be created. So now in total we have three objects, two inside the heap and one inside SCP. So moving on to line number 3, we have string s3 equal to hello. So now here we have used literals. So taking our thumb rules, we haven't used new keyword, so object won't be created inside the heap. And second, for every string literal, an object would be created inside the SCP. So JVM would come to create an object inside SCP for the string hello, but it finds that the string hello already exists. So the existing S3 hello object is reused, and we get a reference pointing to S3. So now S3 points to the hello object stored inside the SCP. So now in total we still have the three objects. Then we come to line number 4. In line number 4, we have the string literal hello, and since no new keyword is used, the first thumb rule won't be applicable. And for the second thumb rule of string literal, JVM would go inside the SCP to create a new object for the literal hello. But since for literal hello, the object already exists inside SCP, so JVM won't create a new object. It would create a reference to the existing object and return that. So in the end, these four objects would be created, two inside the heap and one inside SCP. And to the SCP, we get two pointers S3 and S4. So these two S3 and S4 point to the same objects inside the SCP, whereas S1 and S2 point to the uh, objects to different objects inside the heap memory. So here we have same S1 points to hello in heap, S2 points to heap in hello in heap, and S3 and S4 point to hello inside SCP. So conclusion from the above example. So you might here want to pause and read the conclusion in detail and also note it down. So as line 1 is executed as per a thumb rule, a new object inside heap and SCP is created inside heap. A new object will be created inside heap as per a thumb rule, and SCP would be checked for existing value. Since there the value hello doesn't exist, hello is created inside SCP. Then we go to the line, we go to second line. Then in line S2, as per our rule, we have used new keyword, so object in heap is created and SCP is checked. Since hello exists, a new object is not created, and in total we would have three: two in heap, these two in heap, and this one in hello. Then we go to line number 3. So as line 3 is executed, since literal is directly used, SCP is checked, and since hello exists already, a reference to hello is returned. So as we saw, S3 gets a reference to object in SCP and points to this object inside SCP. Then for line number 4, S4 equals to hello. As line 4 is executed, since literal is used directly, SCP is checked, and since hello exists, reference to it is written. So this is the same case as S4, as S3 for S4. So S3 and S4 would point to the same object inside SCP. So therefore, three total objects are created, two inside heap and one in SCP. So moving on, let us consider another example. So we have an example, string s equals to new string hello and s dot concat world and s dot concat. So we have an example, string s equals to new string hello, then s dot concat world and s assign s dot concat cat. So in total, how many objects would be created for this example? So let's take a look. So as per a thumb rule, whenever we use new keyword, an object is compulsorily created inside the heap memory. So since we are using a new, an object gets created inside the heap memory with the content hello. Then our second thumb rule, that for every string literal object is created inside SCP. So since we have the literal hello here, so for this hello, an object would be created inside the SCP. So inside SCP, an object gets created. Hello, and the reference variable s, it points to the object inside heap. So we have s pointing to the object inside heap. Then we come to the second line, s dot concat world. So we have s which is hello, and we are concating world to it. So a new object would be created inside the heap with the content of hello world. So a new object gets created inside heap for hello world. Then since we have literal world here, so as per a second thumb rule, for every string literal, an object gets created inside SCP. So inside SCP, we would have an object for world. And now moving on to the third line. So till now in total we have four objects, two inside heap and two inside SCP. And then moving on to the last line, S equals S dot concat cat. So this concatenation operation, since the content of our S is hello and S dot concat cat, so an object gets created inside the heap with the content hello cat. So h dot concat cat gives us the object hello cat, and this newly returned object, the variable s is made to point to this newly returned object. So now s will point to this hello cat object, and as per a second thumb rule, for every string literal object would be there in SCP. So an object gets created for the word cat inside SCP. So now in total we have six objects, three inside the heap and three inside SCP. So we have three string literals hello, world and cat. So three objects get created inside SCP. And for new keyword we have used once new keyword. So for every new keyword object gets created inside heap. So hello got created here, and S was pointing to it. Then we had the runtime operation of concatenation. So hello world. So this hello world got created inside heap, and then the third line of concatenation hello plus cat. So for this example, we saw that six objects got created, three inside the heap and three inside the SCP. So now let's move on. So this is the same diagram which I illustrated now. You might want to draw it. And here's the conclusion. In total, six objects are created, three in heap and three in SCP. You might want to pause and read and in fact note it down. So when line 1 is executed, hello is created in heap and hello is created in SCP as per our both thumb rules. Then variable s points to the hello object in heap. Then after line 2, the literal world is created in SCP and hello world is created in heap. But note that there isn't any reference variable that is being assigned to this object. So this automatically goes for garbage collection. But that isn't a concern now. We are looking at the objects created. So it did hello world did get created inside the heap. Then after line 3, the literal cat gets created in SCP, and the word hello cat, this object hello cat gets created inside the heap, and variable s is now reassigned, and it points to the hello cat in heap. So that's what we saw. Now let's move on. So let us consider now another example. So we have one string here, string named spring, and then we are concatenating, and then another string. And let's take this example.